Welcome to Mitchell Maths. In this video we're going to have a look at the cosine rule. The cosine rule and sine rule are used when you have non-right angled triangles. If you have a right angled triangle, then you'd use the method of SOHCAHTOA, which is much easier to do. The first question is we need to find the length of BC. We're trying to find the side here. And the reason we know we need to use cosine rule and not the other type of rule in trigonometry, which is the sine rule, is because we've only got one angle. If we'd had two angles, then we probably would have had to use the sine rule in order to work out the missing side. The first thing you need to do is you need to label a triangle. And to label a triangle, it's the same for whether you're using a sine rule or cosine rule. You need to label the angles with capitals A, B, C. In this question, it just so happens that the angles have already been labelled. And then you label the corresponding sides, the sides which are opposite the angle, with the lowercase letter. So, for example, because this angle is angle A, we label the opposite side lowercase a. We can see that this angle here is B, so we label the opposite side B, and we see that this is C, and we label this C. One very important thing that you need to do when you're using a cosine rule in order to find a side is you need to make sure the angle you're using is labelled A. And if it's not labelled A, you would need to swap out around the labelling to make it A. Now, the formula for cosine rule to find a side is a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cos a. And you do need to learn that formula for your exam. You don't get given it. And now it's just a case of plugging the numbers in. So b is 17, so I have a squared equals 17 squared plus c squared, which is 14.7 squared, minus 2 times b, which is 17, times 14.7 times cos 32. And if you put that into your calculator, what you will get is 95.65. That's a squared. In order to find the length of this side, you need to square root both sides. And the square root of 95.65 is 9.78. So that's how you use cosine rule into how to find a side. Now let's look at how you can use it to find an angle. The formula is just a rearrangement of the formula we saw on the other page, but you're probably best off just learning it. It's b squared, so it's cos a equals b squared plus c squared minus a squared over 2bc. Again, we're going to need to label a triangle, and the angle that you need to label as A, which it's already been labelled as. Sometimes it might not be. Therefore, this side is A, and B and C, it doesn't actually matter which way around you label them. So, yeah, again, it's just a case of plugging the numbers into the formula. We've got 8.1 squared plus C, which is 5.3 squared, minus A squared, which is 7.2 squared, all over 2 times 8.1 times 5.3. And that comes out as 0.488. Cos A equals 0.488. But we want to find what angle A is. And if we're going to do that, we're going to need to separate the cos from that. And the way we separate cos from an angle or sine from an angle is we take the inverse. So to take it to the opposite side, we need to do inverse cos, which you can find on your calculator by pressing shift and then the cos button. So A equals cos minus 1, 0.4 8. And the inverse is cos that'll give us 60.8 degrees. That's how to find an angle. Now we're going to have a look at some more difficult questions involving the cosine rule. In this question, what they've done is they've given us two triangles, and we're going to need to do 2 steps in order to find angle x. The reason we can't find angle x straight away is because we don't have the side BC, but we can use the triangle on the other side to find this line BC. And then once we've found BC, we can use the cosine rule to find the angle. First off, we need to know the cosine rule so it's b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cos A. Therefore, if I label this triangle, I've got side B, I've got side C, and I've got side A. And the angle's A, so that's okay. I don't have to change any of the labels that they've already been given. Right, okay, so I've got 10.7 squared plus 12.6 squared minus 2 times 10.7 times 12.6 times cos 36. And that gives me a squared equals 55.1. And I need to square root both sides in order to find the length of A, which is 7.42. Always, you're probably better off if you're going to use that calculation in further on, is you're probably better off writing it to a couple more significant figures. Personally, I just leave it as answer in the calculator, which is probably the best way to do it. It's just to avoid rounding errors later on. Now I need to find this angle here, and I'm going to change this D to an A. And that side's already been labelled A, then I'm going to label this side B, and this side can be C. Always make sure your angle that you're trying to find when you're using cosine rule is angle A. And the formula is cos A equals b squared plus c squared minus a squared over 2bc. Again, it's just a case of plugging in the formulas. There's a lot of that in trigonometry. 8.9 squared plus 8.1 squared, take away a squared, which is 7.42. You can use answer it if you still left it in your calculator. Over 2 times 8.9 times 8.1. And you'll find that equals 0.573. And in order to separate the cos from the angle which we want to find, we need to do what we call inverse cos, as I said in the last question. And that gets us, if you put that into your calculator, it'll get you 55.1 degrees. Right, we'll have a look at a bit of a different question. So this one's quite different. It says AB and DE are parallel. And if you look at this type of shape, you'll actually see it in the similar shapes section. And I have got another video on separate video on similar shapes if you need to recap that. And when we're dealing with similar shapes, we need to find the scale factor. And we know that this side is proportional to this side here. So to find the scale factor, we're going to do 9.8 divided by 4.9, which is equal to 2, which we're going to need later on in the question. Now, in order to find the length of DE, I haven't got enough information on this side, but on this side, I've got two sides in the angle, which means I can use the cosine rule in order to find the side AB, which will be a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cos A. And if I look at this triangle, I can actually see I'm going to need to change some of the labels because I've got the angle, this point with the angle labelled as C at the moment. I'm going to need to change that to A and label this side A, and I'll change this A to a C just for the purpose of the formula. And now that I've changed the labels, I can plug the numbers into the formula. B is 10.5 squared. I've got plus 9.8 squared minus 2 times 10.5. You don't actually need to put brackets on because the multiply happens before subtracting, but I just tend to. Cos 48. And that gets you A squared equals 68.6. To find the side A, to find AB, I need to do the square root of 68.6, which will get me 8.28. Now, because I'm trying to find side DE, I know that this triangle's twice as big because it's been enlarged by scale factor. It's enlarged by scale factor 2. I'm going to need to divide 8.28 by 2 to find the length of DE. So 8.28 divided by 2 is equal to 4.14 centimetres. And that's how you do that question. That question's a mix between similar shapes and trigonometry using the cosine rule, and it was on one of the specimen papers, so something like that could come up. And the final question we're going to do, Amy has a triangular shaped garden. Some of the dimensions are shown below. She would like to put a fence around the garden. The fence costs £20 per metre. Calculate how much it would cost altogether. So what we're going to need to do in this question is we're going to need to find the perimeter of the garden. But we can't do that yet because we're missing one side. But because it's a triangular garden, we can use cosine rule in order to find the other side. And once I know the perimeter of the garden, I can times it by 20 in order to find the cost. Right, okay, so I'm going to need to label this. I'm going to label the angle A because that's, you always need to do that. It doesn't actually matter which way B and C go. 8.1 squared plus 10.6 squared minus 2 times 8.1 times 10.6 times cos 95. Type that into your calculator and you will get 192.9. Square root both sides in order to find out what is. That's 13.9 rounded. So now I need to find the perimeter of the triangle or the garden, and I'm going to do that by adding all the sides together. I've got 13.9 plus 10.6 plus 8.1, which altogether will give me a garden area of 32, or perimeter length of 32.6 metres. And to find the cost, I do 32.6 times by 20 because it costs £20 per metre. So I need to times the cost by the number of metres I need to put the fence round. And that comes to £651.80. And that's how to do that question. That's how to find the cost to put a perimeter around the garden. Right, thank you for watching. I hope you found that helpful. If you liked the video, please hit the subscribe button. And for practice questions, please visit www.mitchellmathsandscience.com. The link can be found in the description.